Hello and welcome to ARC360's The Future in Focus digital event series. Before starting, we'd just like to thank our corporate partners, BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emacs, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Mercer, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams, as well as our partners, Aztec, the Green Park Specialists, Indasa, Prasco, and the Innovation Group. Thanks, and we hope you enjoy the following webinar.
Kevin, I'm going to come across to you first then, my friend. So the first habit, lay it out for us, set it out if you can.
Okay, so I've actually started with the last habit of Stephen Covey, if you like, and I'm gonna start with how he put it, so as it brings it into something in a body shop. But the story goes that this guy's walking through a wood and he sees a lumberjack sawing down a tree, and it seems to be taking him a while and very difficult. And he says, what's the matter? And he said, well, this saw seems blunt. And he said, well, why don't you sharpen it? And he said, well, I haven't got time to sharpen it. He goes, well, if you sharpened it, it'd be much more efficient and easy to cut. And he went, if I stop, I'm not cutting down the tree, so I haven't got time to sharpen it. So he just walked off. He left him to it. And that reminds me a little bit like I used to go into quite a lot of body shops, and my sort of forte is the paint side, obviously. And I often, you see a car painted the wrong colour, and you'd say to the painter, why didn't you do a pattern? Why didn't you do a spray card for that car? And invariably the answer would always come back as, I haven't got time to do a spray card. We've got to just get cars done. But when it turns around, it's the wrong colour. They have to make the time to correct the colour. They have to make the time to put it back through the shop. A lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted revenue, and it's not optimising or maximising their labour potential. So looking at this, what's a way of solving that problem? Well, if you introduce an SOP, which is a possible solution, so a standard operating process to actually make sure that the colour is checked, the parts are checked, the inventory is checked all before the car gets anywhere near it being repaired. And that means it's made part of the plan, and you get success. It removes the anxiety, it removes the will it, won't it scenario, and it makes everything flow.
The kind of first one is what gets measured gets managed, and I know this is a massively contentious one because a lot of people think that it's the wrong approach. I personally think it's the right approach if you get the content right. And you work through it in a structured way. So there's a couple of things that really matter in there. Okay, there's some rules for a start, and I've been a massive advocate of this over the years. Okay, the right thing, not everything. Okay, so like just because we've got huge access to data, just because we've got kind of great MI and reporting tools these days, it doesn't mean we should just look at absolutely everything. You just become blind in that moment in time. I think balance, massively important. So you've got to have a balanced outcome, and I'll come on to that because that ties it back nicely to what Kevin was saying. And make your peace with the fact that you can't measure everything. Sometimes it's just a gut feel, and it shouldn't be ignored. Just because you've got a great dashboard and it's all green or it's red or it's whatever color it is, you should kind of make your peace that there are some things that you just have to have a gut feel, and you just have to kind of go with what you can see. What's really important in this kind of is that you have measurements and you have metrics. Okay, so a measurement is you count something, but a metric is you've got to compare it to something. Is it good, bad, or indifferent? Okay, so you've got you can have a target, you can look at how you've performed in the past, but the real important one for me on this one is trends, right? You got to watch the trends. They'll give you everything. They'll tell you where you're going. They'll make you reactive, rather than kind of like, they'll kind of keep it in the front of your mind as to what's going to happen going forward so that you can take action. The bit that I'm going to tie back to what Kevin was saying is the balanced part. In our industry, it's very easy to focus on volume in, volume out, right? That's the absolute, but volume is king in this industry, okay? And volume is short term. And I know it's a short-term pain that we're absolutely all feeling at this point in time, but actually, if you don't balance your outputs and what you measure, you will only ever have a short-term business.
One of my old bosses at Direct Line, Steve Maddock, he said to me, and this is a management, he read it himself, start with the end in mind. Be clear about where you want to go. And I think that's a really important thing. And that's stuck with me. And when you've identified, when you've been clear about where you want to go, and that isn't an easy job, by the way, that can take ages to really suss out what your goals and objectives are, but it's worth spending time doing it. Share them as well, like make them public.
The overriding one is break every problem down into simple steps. And there are many variations again of this kind of, lots of different people have written various kind of approaches to this back in time. For me, it's just keeping it simple again, right, and breaking it down. So whatever your problem is, break it down. Don't try and look at it as one overall problem, but like section it up. So if your problem is workflow around the shop, don't complicate it by going through the 50 different steps. Keep it to 7, never more than 7 in my view. It is the approach going forward. And I guess kind of how it plays into our industry at this moment in time is that it's hugely complex. There are a lot of challenges and a lot of problems playing in. And so all of us are looking at things we've never seen previously that are challenging us. And sometimes it can literally feel like you're going a little bit insane. And so when I say I'm going to fold in sort of various approaches to this, always break it down is the overriding one here. But in second place to that is prioritize. So prioritize kind of your breakdown. So once it's broken down, then look at what you've got to do to get from where you are now to where you want to go to, and make sure it's prioritized. Again, I think somebody mentions earlier what a previous boss had said to them. I've had some great mentors back in time, and one of the biggest statements that I remember from one of the first roles I had was somebody said to me, when your boat is surrounded by crocodiles, hit the one on the head that's going to eat you first.
I mean, another thing I think is really important is, and it is really, really important, like, and I say it to my kids, and you don't always have the benefit of it in hindsight, but it is to do what you really love. If you do something you love, it's not work, right? And by a pure accident, I've ended up in this industry and I absolutely love it. I think every part of it is great. I know it's got its challenges and everything else. But it has got tremendous people in it. It's got tremendous innovation, ingenuity, opportunity. It has got a ton of things. So that's probably my other thing. Do what you love. If you don't enjoy it, try to find a way. But if you don't, get out. I mean, there's body shops that I talk to out there. I know a couple of people who hate body shops, and yet they've been tremendously successful. And I just think, how the hell have they managed to do that? They've been brilliantly successful doing something they don't even enjoy doing. I would say to them, sell up and get out. Because if you've been a success at something you hate, think how great you're going to be at doing something you love.
And the whole intent of the IR is purely just to provide the clarity. ADAS is a feature, a safety feature fitted to modern cars that needs to be managed in repair. Body shops can make a decision, invest in the capability to do it in-house, or find third-party providers that can support to complete the task for you. But either way around, it has to be managed. You wouldn't give a car back to the customer without the brakes joined back up when you've carried out a repair. You wouldn't give a car back to a customer without an ADAS feature reinstated before you give it back to them.
When we first started out on this journey with ADAS, it was, which Dean will probably nod, it was, we were talking about windscreens, but it's so much more now, and the difference on systems and the varying degree of processes required to reset ADAS is the difference between manufacturer and model, and then age of model. We see massive changes every year. There's something new. So if you're static systems or your dynamic systems, even those dynamic systems, the processes for a new 21 model year will change, and this is why you need to be up up to date with your research on your methodology and your training, your use of the technical repair manuals is the most important thing, I think. So following those recommended guidelines is always going to be the key. But it's about the use of that, and it's about continual use of that. And I think I'll maybe pick up on that as we go through it, and that will run, maybe be part of the theme. But, gone are the days of just printing things out. And I'll mention that again, because I think this is where it's going to be going in the future.
We have invested heavily in technology. We do subcontract out some things, particularly in terms of the ADAS settings, but it's moving at a pace that I find can be quite difficult to keep up with, because you often find you're the latter part of the stage where the information is coming through. So the vehicles are developed, released. There's an accident damage. I mean, we've had stuff in that's sort of driven out from the showroom on the very first day. Somebody's had an accident. You can't get the parts. You can't get repair methods. And I take what Martin's saying. We will move away from the days where we print them off and you sit there and you read through pieces of paper going, oh, what comes next? But I would like to see the body shop world technology moving quicker and information coming through faster.
And you'll hear me constantly today, training, because we're no longer living in an environment or a world with the cars around us, with the technology that we've got to use to repair those cars. No longer can we do it based on skills that are outdated, and that's technical and soft skills.
I think we've got to look at where we move forward. The vehicle technology has moved on more than the last 10 years than it has in probably over 50. And it's increasingly picking up pace year on year. So the development of of a vehicle, design features are created, they're developed, and they're developed due to environment, they're developed due to safety, evolution, customer choice and experience. And they're designed really. They're designed, then they're placed through engineering, irrespective of what manufacturer. And they're engineered, they're manufactured. And then we have to deal with the repair. And then we've got repair manual, repair methodology, repair manual. So those things take place. And once those things are in place, that then defines your training requirement. And there is always going to be, and as you said, Jill, it's the pace when the vehicle hits the market to the availability of repair methodology, training, etc. And especially probably outside in the non-approved, non-authorized repair network, which will find that much harder. But you got to remember that the pace is moving. It's so fast, so it's so difficult to catch up with these things. And what the design features that were developed for premium vehicles, they might be designed for premium vehicles, but a year later they're not. They're in the everyday run-of-the-mill vehicles. So it's that pace that's going to be the problem going forward, I think.
I think it's important we acknowledge the challenge that the new technologies are bringing, because it's not as easy as to say is a body shop keeping pace with this. It's not that easy. It's not as simple as going, keep pace. The last kind of major technological evolution a body shop had to deal with was going from solvent-based to waterborne paint. And now, in the same breath, we're talking about EVs, ADAS, potentially semi-automated driving just around the corner. We don't even talk about the connected car that much. It's not really spoken about in terms of repair, but it will have an impact, undoubtedly. So I think it's scary to think about the skills and equipment investment required, but it now has to be brought into the thinking. It's no longer acceptable not to think about it. And I kind of put it this way, Mark. It's unreasonable to expect customers in any industry to have complex supply chains. And this is unfortunately where the industry may be heading. And if we think about it simple, we talk about EVs and we talk about ADAS, but think about a body shop without a paint booth. Would it be reasonable to expect a customer to take their car for repair to a body shop to repair the accident and then have to take it to a secondary supplier to refinish the paintwork afterwards? It just doesn't happen today. I'm sure it was something that happened at some point in the past, and then body shops incorporated paint booths and painting capabilities within their business, either them themselves or with a supplier that supplies them rather than the customer. And you've got to think about this in the same way. Now we're talking about ADAS and EV, because no longer is it niche, it's become mainstream. 6 million ADAS vehicles requiring some form of calibration post-accident on the roads today. EVs, okay, were smaller volumes, but they're now outselling combustion engine vehicles every single month. So while I know it's a high cost, it's not an option any longer to think, shall I or shan't I?
An MET technician will go in some way to becoming electric vehicle technicians, but at what level ultimately? I think looking at it, apprenticeships in electric vehicle will be the key to this. I would see that to be the next thing. It's about growing your own, isn't it? Bring along apprenticeships to do this. If you think about the amount of electric vehicles that we will have, if we've moved from, I think was it 56,000 to 86,000 in 1 year vehicles, and every manufacturer is proposing the volume by 2025, etc. The amount of electrical technicians or electrical vehicle technicians that we're going to require is going to be substantial. And I think from a body shop point of view, a body shop that has a number of manufacturer approvals, or especially groups, maybe it will be a roaming role. It will be a very, very sought after role for a technician that's probably gone through all the manufacturer approval training, but very costly, lots of investment in that.
The investment for one business required to cover all bases is just too great, and it's not feasible. And if I were running a body shop today, I would be doing my market research. I'd be doing my analysis of where my competition is moving, and I would find a segment, and I would make some very, very tough management decisions, of course. But I would define what my business should focus on, and I would focus on that purely, and accept that that's a bit difficult and challenging for some work providers, undoubtedly. But if you are still a relatively small size business trying to repair all the various makes and models of vehicles and all the various technologies today, you want to hide into nothing, because I just don't think it can be done.
I suppose it's around, customer delivery and then how technology can support that. So in Motor in the UK, we genuinely are working towards being seen as a customer service focused insurance company. Internally, we have what we call the claims commitment, and that's really about, from our customers' point of view, when they make a claim, make it clear to them what's going to happen, make it personal, so offer them choice, make it collaborative, so work with them on the claims process. And then, most important for me anyway, is about making it effortless for customer. So again, around that choice piece, we want our customers to have an effortless claims journey. And, a lot of customers want as close to, immediate outcomes as possible. And we do aim to give customers freedom of choice, around, for example, how they report the claim to us. So online, through an app, or, the more traditional, just over the phone. And then when it comes to the progress of the claim, again, it's the customer's choice how they can communicate with us. So web chat, SMS, WhatsApp, or, good old telephone. And, in today's society, 100% there is the place for the voiceless interaction, but it's also about recognising that some of our customers just want that more traditional route of reporting a claim over the phone, taking their vehicle to the repair network and just having a chat with people. And as I said, that's just about bringing it back to our claims commitment and just making that journey as personal as possible for the customer. But I also think, we can sit back and say, we've got all these processes in place, but it's about sense checking what that actually means for the customer. A key area for us, customer aside and people aside, is just around the whole sustainability piece, although it does have a customer and a people lens. So as an organisation, we're committed at a group level to be one of the most responsible and impactful businesses in the world. There's been various commitments made around a reduction in our operational footprint. We have a Zurich forest where we've planted 1 million trees. There had been commitments around having 100% of our fleet fully electric. And I do think from a customer perspective, and me as a consumer as well, you are a bit more aware of what an organisation's belief and values are. And I do think that people are paying a lot more attention to that. So when it comes to the supply chain, it is something that we are exploring. And, we do want to work with companies who have the same beliefs and values as us. We can't really be saying at a strategic level that we're going to be doing all these great things, but then directing quite a lot of money through supply partners that don't share in our ambitions. And I think that sustainability, it adds a whole new lens to the procurement process. So, think about the procurement process, governance, data, SLAs, cost, impact on customer. But as a responsible insurer, we're now looking to partner with businesses that have sustainable practices around, we say it's 3 key areas. So it's around environmental, obviously, then it's around, social, and then it's around ethical. And then, taking that a step further, it's around getting customer feedback through our supply partners. So we do value the customer feedback, and we need to understand how the claims journey has felt to them. So any supply partnerships needs to have that customer lens over the top of it as well. And, from a supply chain point of view, so the continued evolution of these vehicles and the fitment of ADAS equipment becoming more commonplace, in particular on electric vehicles, you would think should see the frequency of motor claims reducing, but I suppose until we're at the point where it's complete 100% adoption, there's still going to be people driving their traditional cars and still making the mistakes that go on in the roads just now. But just on that ADAS point, the technology that's fitted in the ADAS sensors, these tend to be in the bumpers, the windscreens, the wing mirrors, the areas that are pretty exposed if there's a collision. And these sensors can be fairly expensive to repair. So potentially, when more cases like that on the roads, then there could be an increase in repair costs. And one of the challenges, that Thatcham are very alive to in the industry is, if there's a damaged ADAS sensor or one needs to be replaced, they need to be calibrated. And, each manufacturer has their own process around that. And it means that repair body shops need to send sometimes vehicles to main dealers for calibration because, like I say, they all have their own individual processes, which again adds to the cost of the average cost for repair, but also impacts the key-to-key time because, it's not done in-house, it's then sent out, so it could potentially add a few days. So for us, we're working closely with our networks to make sure that, there is the skill set to repair the modern vehicles, and, the repairers have the ability to tap into the main dealerships to get the ADAS resets and whatnot done. But in an ideal world, I think we would want all the networks to be able to carry out, you know, the initializations and resets, because I do think that at the end of the day, it just gives a more streamlined process for our customers, really. And, you know, now once things do start to open back up, from a personal perspective, I don't think I'll ever go into the office full time again. And I know that that's a lot of what my friends, family and colleagues are saying as well. So I guess one of the things would be around, will there be the traditional rush hour times, you know, the morning and the evening? There probably will be to some extent. But will the roads be as heavy as what they were, you know, January, February of 2020? I'm not sure, because I think for a lot of people, working at home is actually working for them. So I don't think rush hours will be as busy, and, you know, historically that's always been when most of the accidents have happened. So there could potentially be a lower claims frequency because there's less users out on the road at those busy times. But I also do think that we need to give consideration to other road users. So, you know, the government's push towards greener transport, you know, where I live, I see so many more bicycles on the road. So is that going to be a more common thing, that people cycle to work rather than drive to work, because it has been very much encouraged? So, you know, that can give rise to different types of accidents than we see just now. And then just the other thing that I would think about is around e-scooters. So, you know, there's pilots happening in England just now. What impact is that going to have on the roads? Again, you know, that's a completely different set of road users, and, you know, how will that all play out? So I don't know. I think maybe frequency will reduce, but then, you know, with the other types of road users, when it comes to cyclists and e-scooters, it just might be just a completely different ballgame.
I think probably the priority, I think not just my personal view, I think the view of the business is that the priority of my role is to protect the culture, to develop the culture, to ensure the culture is maintained so that it's an attractive place where people want to work. So looking after our current employees, but also making it attractive for people to want to come and work for us. And I know, you know, as a HR function, there's lots of other things involved, but the priority, it is culture. It's the one thing that I'm just really passionate about, and the business is really passionate about. And we've done a lot, which we will get into later on, I'm sure. We've done a lot of work on culture, and because it's the centre of everything that we do.
In contrast to the size and scale, the culture here feels, and it was something that grabbed me when I joined some 18 months ago. And this comes from the very top, the guy who runs the company. The culture here feels orientated around that family word. And I don't say that cheaply, because it's easy to say, but if you are with Copart and on board and understand Copart's values, you absolutely get a sense of family. And that, you know, given that we're in 22 countries around the world, to feel that on a daily basis is pretty impressive given the size and scale of the business. So yeah, I think you know, from a cultural point of view, although we're big, and you're right to say we're big, we have incredibly diverse teams. Certainly in the UK, you know, we've got a bunch of different disciplines, but an incredible close relationship both with the corporate business and with other businesses across the world. So it feels a really good family culture that is adopted. It's still run by someone who started the business. It is ultimately, although NASDAQ listed, a family business. So.
In terms of priority, I guess the priority is always our people, because if you invest and look after your people, the customer will benefit from that. So I think at the moment, obviously with everything going on with the pandemic, etc., welfare, so employee welfare, making sure that whether people are working or not working, that they're okay. There's, we're doing quite a big awareness around mental health at the moment, and ensuring that people know that there's support here if they need it. If we can't offer it internally, we'll look externally if people need some support with whatever is going on in their lives. But also being flexible. So being flexible in terms of if people have challenges at home, people have had homeschooling with their children, or they've had to isolate because they've come in, or they're caring for someone who might have to isolate. So I think it's about making sure that we're being flexible in terms of letting people be able to do what they need to do to get that work-life balance. And yeah, I will touch on Teacup. So we haven't launched it yet, but we're launching it on the 12th of April. So how are we trying to achieve how we can look after our people? It's an app that everyone will have on their phone.
Been working hard at communicating outwards and downwards and across the organisation, all about what we stand for, what their purposes, their value, their contribution, driving that sense of belonging and value through a bunch of different communications, and welfare is part of that mix, right? We want our people to feel good about coming to work. A phrase we often use internally is kind of bring your real self to work, and that means open culture, it means diverse culture, it means a tolerant and inclusive culture. We have had to, given the pandemic and the lack of face time, we've had to really look at all the mechanisms we can use to cascade around and about the organisation. What is important to all those diverse teams. If we get an opportunity to speak to someone who we think is going to add value to Copart, bring a bunch of skills and talent from their point of view. If we can give that story, give them something to really understand about Copart. We're not a household brand, so they're not going to see it necessarily from the external view. Really sell that story of the success, how we put customers first, people first. And it moved me from a point of view of who's Copart to, wow, I literally cannot wait to join this place. And also in our story, we want all of our people to feel accountable, first of all, right? They're accountable for what they do, but also feel totally empowered to do their job. The last thing we want to do is have every single teammate in our organisation asking upwards for permission or worrying about whether they should or shouldn't. So I was going to say sell the idea of empowerment. It's a reality. We are giving people the opportunity to add an immense amount of value through their talent and skills. They've got to work within the appropriate parameters, but we want to give them that freedom and empowerment and sometimes autonomy to get on and do. So we build we sell a good story, tell a good story because it's true, but we still have to fight for talent. So it's not always easy.
What people are craving at the moment is development. They want to be developed. They want investment. So we thought, how can we get that across? And as part of that talent acquisition website, we put on, employee journeys. So, where we have, invested in people, trained them and developed them. And it's commented on quite a lot. It's like, it's great that you want to develop. And going through interviews, it's always mentioned. People want, that's what they want. They want that. So I think if we can show that, and we're really, really passionate about that, about developing from within, making sure that if people want to get to a certain point, what can we do to help them get there? We make sure everyone has a personal development plan so that we can see what aspirations people have, so we can get them to where they need to be. And that's big at the moment. I'm seeing a lot of that come through.
It starts with a sense of understanding of the purpose and the objective of that individual in their role. Without that kind of clear direction, call it leadership, or you can boil it down to just one or two simple lines that you make and talk about and make very clear, is that without that sense of purpose, without that sense of direction, you don't know where you're going. All roles are like that. Some roles are charged with creating that sense of direction, leadership roles, management roles. Other roles, you need to enable the individual to understand what we're going for and why that's important and the part they play in it. Sometimes, if you're in a role that's more administrative or support, it can feel like you're just doing a job, but you're an absolutely important component of the whole machine and cog, and make the whole thing work. So for me, it starts with that sense of purpose, and then also, I'll hold my hand up. Sometimes this part falls down, but communication, regular communication, giving access to me as a manager or others, just give that opportunity to talk about how it's going. You can have all the formality alongside it, which, you know, in some roles is really essential because the success of that role is judged on, let's say in sales, are judged on key metrics, and reward comes from achieving those things. So yeah, the formality of objectives and targets and the like is essential in some roles, but in all roles, communication, giving that opportunity to understand what's going well, what isn't, support, as Stephanie mentioned, formal training, you know, that stuff really matters. And if you can create a sense of empowerment alongside that, then as a manager, you know, my job becomes easier because people feel like they're heading for the outcome.
Yeah, we have a culture team that meet on a quarterly basis. And the whole point of that culture team is to look at incentives that we can propose to the board that will improve employee engagement, make the company more attractive to people who may want to come and work for us. And obviously, you know, if there's anything we can do to make it a better workplace for our staff and for any potential staff, that's what we're here for. And I think that's just been a real, it's been the driver for the culture over the last few years.
I mean, we signed 31st of January 2020. Steve and I initially started talking about an MBO maybe 2-3 years prior to that. We traveled together a lot, going to different events and stuff, and you just end up talking for 4 or 5 hours every day. And yeah, it just came to, you know, we're in the car talking one day, and you know, we mentioned it to each other, had a chat, and you know, when we were both ready, when we had the right team in the business, that you know, we'd move forward. But I know he'd always promised Jan, his wife, that you know, he'd be out when he was 60. And you know, as the time came near, then we started getting a bit more serious over it. The size of the business, obviously we knew we needed a team. You know, 1-2 people couldn't have done it. So Dan had been in the business as a finance manager for 4 years at the time, I think it was, maybe 5. Obviously Phil and Joe were involved also, and we just had the right team at that time. And Steve and his son Dale came to us and said, you know, I think that was the right time, we could start talking about it. And we discussed some things, obviously price and timescales and stuff. None of us knew what to do because neither of us had done it previously. So Dan started looking for some financial advisors, really corporate financial advisors. We'd met with Lexington and a few others, and then we liked Lexington. we met Thomas and his boss Gary, and engaged with them. Then that was in the March, I think, March 9, 2019.
Okay. I think eyes get opened as well to a lot of things, because you know, you're, as a management team, you're highly valued, but you know, you don't quite see everything. You're not quite looking under the bonnet of what's there. And as part of an MBO process, the vendor's just got to keep the car analogy going, he's got to lift that bonnet for you to see what's in there. And I think it does open, you know, management team's eyes to, oh, actually, there's a hell of a lot that goes on to keep this company going. Yeah. Look, management team, in this case, it was great. There was 4 really different skill sets, all in different parts of the business. It was brilliant. And that sort of varies. Sometimes we work with management teams and there's only one person who's got to bear the load. But with the IRG deal, it worked really well because the 4 of them all took on slightly different roles within the MBO process.
I think the serious point when we were talking, we're actually driving to Hereford. And I can't actually remember the words too much. I just remember us having the conversation and thinking, this could happen, you know. And I think that the ambition and the growth and understanding what he wanted, because I think knowing Steve, because we were pretty close, we talk every day, pretty much. Knowing that he wouldn't have just sold the business to anybody, you know, this, as Thomas said earlier on, But, I think you get shareholders, you get business owners that build a business to sell, and he built a business to sell. We always spoke about that, but it was his baby. He wanted it it wasn't just a cash cow. He didn't want to sell just to fill his bank. He wanted it to continue and grow, and having the right team was just as important to him as it was to me, because the future of the business was going to be whoever was with me as part of the management team. So yeah, it is a nervous conversation, because I think you run through all kind of scenarios in your head of how it could go. As Dan said, I could have been walking home.
So I think we had a brief chat and then set a date for the guys to come into the office to meet with myself, my colleague Gary. And I think you get these calls and you say, yeah, sounds good. The first thing you do is you jump on Company's House and have a look at the business. What does it do? And look, never heard of IRG before. And yeah, had a look at it and thought, wow, this looks like a really, really interesting opportunity for us. So met with them, got on well, gave the guys a sort of proposal, and yeah, they agreed it, and we were off, which was brilliant for us. It was great to work with a business like, of the strength and caliber of IRG. It's exactly the sort of company at Lexington that we want to work with. And then it was very quickly into, well, look, what are the next steps? Setting out to the guys. Look, I think the thing we always say, you've got that word grueling. You said that earlier, Mark. I think I always tell clients, look, it's going to be hard, guys. It'll be good fun, but it's going to be a really difficult process. And then we were really, really quickly into pulling together the materials we needed to go out and speak to lenders. Like I said, the overall or headline deal structure had been agreed, and it was at a level that we knew we could get debt funding on, which was great. Look, sometimes vendors think their business is worth, 20 million, when really it's only worth 10, and you're like, it's just not going to work. But here there was a really sensible view on deal structure. Worked a lot, Dan and I spent a lot of time together in this room, pulling together. You always have a financial model, which is just sets out the business growth plan for the next 3 years on a P&L, balance sheet and cash flow. And you have an information memorandum, which is like a prospectus on the business, setting out its key strengths, the management team, where they sit in the market and what its growth plans are. And we were really quickly into sitting down and meeting some funders and doing some presentations. I think the guys did about 5 or 6 2-hour sessions with a number of funders, we probably started in earnest in about the May time, didn't we? And then probably sort of May, June, July, met with funders, and then sort of August, September time settled on a particular funder and signed heads of terms with them.
Over the last 12 months, they've, when, obviously everyone's aware of sort of, 2 weeks after the deal, we got flooded, which, which wasn't great.
Everyone's got covenants. They've got to hit within 2 weeks. We'd failed us because we'd lost 20% of our turnover.
But they've just been nothing but supportive for us. We've had a tough year. They know that, and I speak to them pretty much every other day, sort of thing. And we discuss things and so on, sort of the business, and if there's any support we need, if there's any information they need. And like I said, I think Thomas has mentioned in the past, for us it was a brand new relationship 2 weeks after, and sort of everything sort of went wrong. And you find from a funder, their true colours, how they support a business that is relatively new to them. And like I said, over the last 12 months, they've just been nothing but supportive for us.
Go back to it, vendors have got, there's a couple of different routes available to them, and the two main ones are, do I go and sell my business to trade, or do I do a management buyout? A management buyout is, I think if you probably looked at success rates, it's probably that little bit easier to get away because you've already got a willing buyer and a willing seller together. Whereas on a trade sale, you've got to go out and test the market. And with a trade sale, you're trying to align all the stars at once. It's based on your internal timing, your performance, but you're also looking at an acquirer and where are they in their cycle, have they got sufficient funds, and what else is going on in their business. with an MBO, that's a little bit easier. I think that then we've got to be careful about is you've got two sides of a transaction that both work within a business, both emotionally invested in a business and a transaction. So you've got to make sure that you keep the management team, especially, keep their eye on the ball in terms of trading, because the last thing you want to happen is trading dips, and that'll spook a funder and a transaction becomes more difficult. But yeah, do I think we'll see more of it in the industry? Yeah, I think we will. I think it's a really attractive route for people. And like I said, I think it's a little bit easier to actually complete than a trade sale. There's two different ways you can go. You've got the debt route or the private equity route. I think from a debt perspective, over the last 12 months, a lot of people have been doing government-backed C-bills. So the debt market is in a little bit of a state of flux at the moment, where the C-bill cycle is sort of coming to an end. There is talk about a recovery loan scheme that I presume then will take precedent as well. So I think it'll be a little bit more slower in terms of debt-funded MBOs. But yeah, private equity, they only really make money by doing deals. And there's plenty of dry powder out there in a lot of the funds that we work with. And I think really good assets and attractive companies, I think they can attract a premium valuation as well. I think, look, a sector like the accident repair sector, ultimately it's been affected because people haven't been out on the road as much. But look, that's going to absolutely change. As soon as people are back out in their cars, they're just going to come back straight back up. So it's an artificial dip for the sector. So I think, and it's typically a sector where there's been a lot of private equity activity as well, both here and in the US. So yeah, I think that's probably a long answer to a simple question, Mark. But yeah, I do. I think it's a really viable opportunity for management teams and vendors out there.